ultimate arrow build time. Not ultimate, but this is going to be my arrow setup for this hunting season. I finally decided. I did a lot of testing. I literally went on Lancaster Archery Supply and I bought like 5 different brands of arrows, shot them all, tested them all, and landed on these for a couple different reasons. And we can go through those kind of as throughout this video. But I'm gonna first show the final product of why and what and where I'm gonna be using them, and then we're gonna dive in and I'm just gonna show you how I put them together in case you're interested about how I put them exactly together. So we're gonna start with the VAP TKO 4mm arrow by Victory. Went with this arrow obviously because of the 4mm. I love a 4mm. I used Easton Pro Comps last year. Why I'm not using Easton Pro Comps this year is, one, they are really expensive. They're technically a target arrow. I didn't really notice that much of increase or any increase of accuracy over any other 4mm arrow. I've used Easton long range 4mm. Those are also really good, but the long range ones and the Pro Comps were not as durable as this one. Just shooting in the backyard and everything, I'd break a Pro Comp every now and again. It just hit the target weird, a back end of an arrow, you'd hit it and it starts splitting. These I haven't broke one yet, except at attack when I shot a boulder. It did blow up. But these are pretty solid. Like I'm very impressed with the durability of them, and it's a 4mm. So impressed with the durability. It's a 4mm and I'm shooting as good as I possibly can with them. They're grouping, they're doing well. That's literally the reason why I chose them. They're not even they got like levels to them. What's the highest level one?
A V1.
V1.
It's 1,000.
Is this the lowest one or the middle one?
It's a V6 probably.
V6? This is the Expert Series. Whatever that is. Oh, V6. Yeah, V6 under 350. So 350 spine, V6. So it's not even their highest tier arrow. So I could even expect better things out of their highest tier ones, but I'm kind of cheap on some things, and I was like, I'm just gonna try these out and test them, and I'm just gonna get their V6. I love them, they're fine. I am running a X-Vane, a 4-fletch X-Vane, which is the same configuration I ran on Pro Comps last year. And I'm running that because this is gonna be my elk, my moose, and potentially some mule deer arrow. So I'll be experiencing a little bit further shots potentially, and also a fixed blade. So I'm having these bigger fletchings on. It's like a 2-degree left helical, which is pretty standard with the zebra bowstrings. It's gonna want to come out of the bow left, so I'm gonna fletch them left helical, and which is really important for fixed blades. But this arrow setup is gonna do really, really well for a fixed blade. I have just 50 grain outsert, 100 grain tip. We can see what the final weight is. I'm not even 100% sure. Where's the scale? You took it out. I didn't know that. All right, scale 0. So we're looking at 435. Phenomenal for anything in North America that you want to kill with a fixed head on it. I don't know if I'd run a giant expandable with this light of arrow. It's not even that light. It's a very median arrow. In that 420 to 460 is, like, my opinion, just a very good medium arrow. It's gonna be fast. It's gonna be, you know, 280 plus feet per second. It's gonna be right in that sweet spot. It's gonna be very good, be able to shoot 100 yards. Just overall a great arrow. I am just gonna run the stock nock. I'm not gonna do a lighted nock because in the 4mm, the lighted nocks do tend to break a little bit more inconsistent, can bend. So I'm just running the plain nock, which will be great and standard and fine. So we're gonna build this in just a second. That's like my Western arrow. Yes, we're going moose hunting if you guys saw that little teaser there. So I'm gonna be using this for moose. We're going on an elk hunt, so mule deer stuff. That is what that arrow is going to be. And yes, you can run an expandable on that. I'm probably gonna run these with an expandable going on an antelope hunt. So antelope are a little bit smaller, you know, more whitetail size. With an expandable on this, it'll be totally fine, 435 grains. So we'll see, but a little bit longer shots, that's what I'm gonna be running. For whitetails, everything whitetails, what I landed on was a RIP TKO from Victory. I might change this, but I have a blazer set on there right now and a 4 fletch. I might just switch to a 3 fletch. I really didn't notice that much of a difference switching to a 4 fletch, no real benefit. So I might still do some testing in just a standard 3 fletch. And we do have a lighted knock on there. I run lighted knocks. Obviously it's a little bit more fun to watch them in videos and stuff. And I just like them too, more to shoot, a little more enjoyable to see right where they go. And obviously find your arrow after you shoot something. 5mm arrow, a little bit stronger, a little bit heavier. Whitetails, you're not potentially shooting as far. You know, hopefully you got just a 20-30 yard shot. You're not 40-50 yards. No need to really cut through the wind at all, but we still have a lot of steerage to help steer. I'll probably run like a G5 dead meat expandable broadhead, so it really doesn't need a ton of steerage, but it's gonna help these big blazers for sure. Again, I ran with the Victory because no durability problems. I shot these a bunch, never broke one. I don't know what it is, but they've really excelled, especially in their components. I know when I tested their stuff a couple years ago, it was like their components weren't 100% there. There was some inconsistencies in their nocks and their inserts. They really, I don't know what they did, but they really stepped it up. I'm impressed. 0 problems. 50 grains in the front. I'm gonna do a 100 grain head. The lighted knock does add like 25 grains, something like that, about. So it is important. I do shoot 100% of the time with these lighted knocks now. Don't switch back and forth. We have a total weight. I'm gonna need a field point. These are gonna be a little bit heavier, but it's still not a heavy arrow. I did the whole 550 grain arrow thing, 500 grain arrow thing, and we could talk for hours on that. That's for a different video, but I'm just not about it. I didn't see enough value. There's pros and cons and everything, but there was more cons in my opinion. So this is a 438. So honestly, it's the same, 435 to 438. It's about the same, but it's a little bit thicker. It's gonna be a little bit more durable. Still gonna be pretty quick, probably in that 280 plus range. Anything you need for killing a whitetail. I'm excited for the setup. I really like it. 4mm out west, 5mm with a blazer, more Midwest whitetail type stuff. So let's dive in. Let's build some of these, and I'll just kind of show you how I do it. Underrated thing when arrow building is a nice light. Lighting is really important to making sure all your cuts and your glue and everything is good. You know, if you're down in your basement and it's dark and you can miss things with light, or I just have really bad eyes and I need light, one or the other. So we have some more RIP TKOs, but I guess I bought V1s. I forgot about that. So I'm gonna be interested to see if V1s shoot any better than V6s. But if you guys are cutting your own arrows or whatever, I'll just really simple talk this through. There's different precise ways you can do it. Some guys like to take the knock out and put like a point in there so it's a completely round like cylinder that they're moving it on, because if you stick it in the end and move the knock, it kind of oscillates a little bit. I don't think it's that much of a difference. Again, kind of my philosophy on thing is the biggest variable is you. So you can go to these extreme extents, but most of the time I don't. So we're gonna cut this. I already have the length correct. You're gonna wanna put the knock end in first. And you wanna push it into the blade and then spin it. You gotta make sure you spin it. There we go. We're going to confirm with the other arrow that we have at the right length, and it is good. Same length. So now what we're gonna do is I have this G5 squaring tool. It's kind of a newer one. I thought it was newer. Riley said it's been around forever, but I thought this was
concept has been around.
Concept's been around forever,
yeah.
But I think this is like a new jig. It's actually kind of cool. So you just lay your arrow down on here, put it in. It's like a diamond bit sandpaper thing. You just kind of spin it a few times, and what that does is it gets your edge 100% square. Sometimes these blades can kind of do something funky to your edge, and this just gets it square. I'm just gonna do the other one that I already have so I don't forget. Bada bing, bada boom, we are ready to glue in. Again, arrow building is all a little bit different. Everyone does it different. I don't clean out the inside of my arrows. I used to, and then I stopped doing it and didn't notice any difference at all, so I no longer clean the inside of my arrows. Sometimes I super glue them, sometimes I use a blue glue. Again, just testing. The last batch I wanted to shoot them like right now, so I just super glued them, and I shot them been shooting them for a long time, and none of them fell out. Every now and again, blue glue, if you're like on a hot day or something and it's really stuck, it can melt on kind of a low temperature. You know, I don't know what it actually is. It's probably like 120 degrees, 130 degrees. It starts breaking apart. And sometimes they pull out, but I don't know. I did a dozen with the super glue and it was totally fine. But I'll show you the fan favorite, the politically correct way to do it is with the blue glue or like Easton hot melt type stuff. So we're gonna do that. I also have my torch in my truck, which is currently not here because it's getting worked on. So we're gonna use this. And we have a torch in my truck because Riley and I broke a trailer the other day and we had to fix it.
But we fixed it.
But we fixed it. That's the important part. With this blue glue, all you do is heat up the glue. You don't really want to heat up the insert too much or anything. You don't want to get the carbon of the arrow hot, or your fingers. That almost stripped on me. Carbon is actually really sensitive. You get it hot, it can break it down, make it more fragile. So all we're doing is we're heating up the glue, putting it on the insert, make sure it's 360 coverage, and then we're just gonna heat it back up. It's a little easier with a torch. How I'm doing this is kind of not awesome, but we're just gonna heat it back up. A tip from George Riles: if you have to use pliers to make arrows, you're running it too hot. You should always be able to use your hands and your fingers, because it never gets that hot. Then you just run it off with your finger. Again, it's not too hot to touch or anything. And shoot a couple times, the rest of that will clean up. And there's our insert. We have our nock already installed, and I think I might do a 3 fletch on this dozen and just see what the difference is, if there's any. We did the noise comparison video, and there was like a very slight difference, but it was negligible, so there's no sound difference really going from 3 to 4. So I think we're just gonna rock and roll with 3. We're gonna do white. I really like white or yellow. Obviously white shows blood better. It's better to see it in the dark or just in general. Obviously yellow, neon yellow is really good too. Black probably looks the sleekest and the coolest, but I try to stray away from black because it's so hard to find your arrows, but it does look the coolest. One thing with fletching arrows, you want to make sure that it is far enough down the shaft that it's not going to touch your face. I was at Total Archery Challenge watching people shoot, noticing there's so much vein contact on people's faces, on people's chins, that's going to throw your shot off, your tune off, everything, shot by shot. So make sure you have it far enough down the arrow that you're not touching your face. That's how I run it on a bits, just that bottom dash line at the bottom of the fletching. Use Boning, Blazer, Bond. I'll tell you what, Blazers, I've had fletched arrows with every fletching, nearly. Blazers require the least amount of maintenance possible to get them to stick. I do not clean off my arrows. I do not clean the fletching. I literally put glue on the vein and stick it on for 5 seconds, and they stick. No fuss about it at all. I've tried them all. Some require pens, acetone, sandpaper, and all this wizard type stuff. And Blazers, I don't know what they're doing, but or Boning in general, the materials they use is just, I don't know what they're doing, but it's a very low maintenance. Make sure that that's all square as a piece of glue stuck in there. And I missed a step, and I missed 2 steps because I have to turn this to a 3 fletch. Because it's at a 4 fletch right now. Pause. It's 120, isn't it? Yeah. Yep. Because it needs to equal 360.
You are smarter than you look.
Smarter than I look, but still not very smart.
Yeah, didn't set the bar.
Yeah, we didn't set the bar very high on that. Alright, I'm going to get rid of this fletching because it's probably dry now. Load in a new fletching. So I do a couple dots, and then I just run the nozzle on it a couple times. Smooth it all out. You don't want any air pockets. Big thing why there's not good adhesion is there's air pockets in there. So that's why a good light comes into play. You just kind of look at it, make sure it's straight. And then a Bitzenberger is literally the most simplest fletching jig ever. And it's pretty consistent. So you slap it on the metal, drag the clip down, and then just do. And then I like to 2-hand it, push down like this, really get all the adhesion, make sure it sticks. I just wait about 5 seconds. You can wait a little bit longer if you want. Then you just open, turn, pull, then you're good. It is still a little wet, so you don't want to really ream on it, but you just spin it and go do the next. And you know, fletching arrows typically requires a cold beverage, good music, TV, because it is one of the most boringest things in the entire world, at least for me. I like to do them typically really fast. You can be very precise about it, be very pretty and neat, and make sure there's no glue, wipe off the glue and everything, but I just run it how it is. I don't really care about how they look. Number 2 going in there. You want to make sure that everything just looks good, because you mess up once and you just gotta redo the entire thing. Open, spin, turn, spin to the next. Another important thing is make sure that arrow is down in there all the way. Sometimes when you spin it, it kind of pops back up. Gotta make sure it's down all the way. Just like that, we got a Blazer 3 fletch with a slight about 2-degree left helical. And now, like I was saying about cleaning up glue, as you can see, there's like little glue, you know, spewing out on the sides. You can take a paper towel and just kind of run it down. That'll just make it look a little nicer when it fully dries. You can do that, you don't have to. It's just aesthetic looks. And what I'll do for all fletchings is once I do them, I'll lay them all out nice and neat, just like this. Don't let anything touch them. You just kind of let them dry for, you know, an hour. Typically, preferably overnight to get them fully solid. I never wait that long and typically don't have any problems. I lay them all out, and then what I do is I'll run through and I'll tip and tail them. You just put a little tiny dot on each side of the vein, and what that does is just helps prevent them to start peeling. You know, if you shoot the target, pass through it, it helps just prevent snagging, overall durability of the vein sticking on. Don't have to do it, it just helps. Doesn't make it look super pretty either, but it really helps with durability of the vein overall. Now we are going to do the 4mm. Gonna switch this back over to 4 fletch. Gonna slip it in. We're gonna double check, make sure that it did switch over to 4 fletch. And these are X veins, like I was saying. What length is this again? What did we do?
3.
These are 3-inch X veins. Landed on 3. It's a good middle road. Same thing with this. I run it on the same line. Nothing is different. That's how my arrows do well at. I have no face contact with that. I've confirmed that. There's no real reason for me to change that. So that's how I run it. A little bit bigger vein, longer vein on this, so we got to do a couple extra dots. Same process though. Real nice looking vein. That yellow really does pop. Count to 5, gently take it off. Taking it off in like 5 or 10 seconds is also good, because sometimes the clamp will glue to the fletching if you hang on to it too long. So taking it off early helps with that. Just like that, we got a 4 fletch, X vein, a 4mm VAP. Pretty easy. That yellow matches that knock really well, actually. Kind of like slick. But that is my arrow setup for this year, guys. I'm gonna run this Western and whitetail setup. It's gonna be great for fixed blades, longer distance because of the 4mm, and for whitetails, expandables, or fixed blades if I mess around with it. But yeah, that's kind of how it is. 430-ish grains for both. Rocking and rolling. We dug up the, where's that 550 grain? Do we put it back? Just because we talked about it, this was a couple years ago. I built these 5mm full metal jackets. These were 340 grains. I had 75 grain brass hidden inserts, and I had a big
single
bevel. I think at this time it was called a Strickland Archery Helix. This thing just took so much work to make it fly well. You know, it was slow. I had to shoot like 80. I think I was shooting a Hoyt Helix or a Hoyt RX-1 at the time. It was like 82 pounds. It was still like only 260 feet per second, 250 feet per second. And this broadhead, you know, any sort of single bevel broadhead after 30 yards or so, you have to really individually tune each broadhead. Got to spin them. Using the blue glue is important. You literally take a little lighter, you shoot. If it hits off, you light it up, you spin it a little bit, let it cool back down, you shoot again. They're just a lot of work, and really I just don't think there's as much benefit. If you're obviously doing some big game in Africa, you know, and want to do some crazy stuff, or love, you know, shooting deer in the shoulder on purpose, this still won't go through a shoulder bone. But anyways, I've done it, and I've really just have landed back on, you know, mid 400 grain arrow when it makes sense. You know, use expandables when it makes sense. Use fixed blades. Obviously, a little bit bigger animal, I like to use a fixed blade on, more reliable. Smaller hole, can cut better. Whitetails, expandables. But that's kind of my arrow setup for this year. We can go on and 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 on about it, because arrows is something that is so technical. You can do spine aligning, you can do group tuning, you can do all sorts of fletching variations, all sorts of weights, all different spines. It's really endless, and at the end of the day, it's personal preference and what you are confident with. That is all that matters. The most important thing is make sure you get out there and practice. You can shoot an untuned bow well. You can have a very tuned bow and still not shoot well because you just don't practice. So make sure, get out there, practice, shoot with your broadheads before season, make sure everything's dialed, practice, 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 don't overthink it, and be confident in your setup. We'll catch you guys in the next one.